Okay, so welcome to the last episode, or maybe it's two more because we have a. If I manage to record the second part of the video as well.
Okay.
This time. So besides, if you have anything special things to cover, then we can go over. I was thinking about one big question that I would like to discuss with you and the others as well, but unfortunately they are not frequent the meetings, so I hope that they will write it in the chat. But I recently started to think about all the issues, basically, or risks that in general open source using open source libraries especially mean. I mean, because that's our focus, not applications so much, but more libraries, and especially for us it's Perl. Though I guess the same issue is relevant for all the languages and their packages, CPAN modules in our case, and to see what are the risks. And partially the reason I started to think about it is because for a long time I wanted to do this, but I got now a little bit of a push, and I started to think that I might want to offer, or I would like to start to offer some kind of a contract to companies to help them making sure that whatever open source they use doesn't have that risk, or those risks are reduced, or whatever issues they have. So I started to think about the lack of maintenance, obviously. So if you have a module that you're dependent and it hasn't been touched for, I don't know, a long time, especially if you have open issues, right? If it's perfect, then it doesn't matter so much that no one changes it.
Yeah,
it's better. But I mean, in general, there are no perfect things. You encounter, as you encounter some issues with one of the modules, and then basically you had to spend time on it.
Yeah,
and it might be fun for you, okay. But if you do it on the company time, that's a cost to the company, basically. And it might be better that you focus on, for the company at least, I mean, maybe not for you, but to focus on the work thing, and not be sidetracked with all the other things that you also need for the work, but could be easily outsourced. Right? Because it's not really part of the product.
Yep, understand. So
I wonder if you have any thoughts about what are the main issues that you're facing with if there is any, really. I mean, besides this one that we saw.
I guess, I mean, that's the sort of thing which I know that problems I have now is one module we use which needs a fix to it, and the maintainer's not actually applying it. So every time we update our system or whatever it is, I have to do a monkey patch on the module to make it work. That's one thing.
So you basically already have this patch.
Yeah.
A pull request, I guess, or if it's not...
well, it's already you know, it's an RT thing where somebody's actually said, somebody from, I think, well, it's a Moosey kind of a problem, and somebody from the Moose community, as it were, has pointed out the problem and pointed out how to fix it. So that's there in the bug list, basically, for the modules, and it's been there for years, basically. Another one is, I mean, one of my favorite ones is datetime format PG, which has got lots of small issues, which I still haven't got around to anything about, but I really ought to get around to putting in some pull requests for.
Okay.
More generally, I haven't heard it about Perl. I know that it is a case with Perl, but I did hear recently that with Python, there's been a whole swathe of malicious code being checked into some Python modules. And on a slightly different, a similar line, I guess monitoring Perl modules for CVEs, for security issues, is quite a headache, really. I mean, we with Perl itself, particularly if you use the system Perl, i.e. the one that comes with your box, then you should be fairly safe because the system, whoever's Red Hat or whoever it is, should be getting the security sorted. But the CPAN modules, there's virtually nothing as far as I know. I did encounter a module which was did something, but I've forgotten what it is. And secondly, it reported a lot of modules, but then said, but it was so, I guess I just got to do it in detail, but there were so many caveats about it. This is a problem, but only if you do this and that kind of stuff, which is kind of fair enough. So you're having to go through each model and say, well, does this apply to me? And so I think the security is something that's really quite an issue. I think in general, if you were attempting to get whatever the security in this country, at least there's a security standard. If you're attempting to do it, how you'd make sure that your CPAN modules were secure, I have no idea, really.
No idea how to make that happen, or I mean, you said you have
Yeah.
the standard.
And unless I mean, you can browse the the CVE list or whatever it is and see if anything mentions any CPAN module. But if it doesn't, then I don't know I have no, unless somebody pops up on Twitter or something and says, hey guys, there's this problem with this module, you need to install an update as soon as you can. I don't know how we find out about it.
Right. So it's interesting because you know the Dependabot? Do you know it? Have you heard about it? So there is, the GitHub has a module or a tool basically that you can enable. I think it runs by default on everything reporting security issues, but you can enable it to update your dependencies. I'll show you. And,
okay. But this will only work with stuff that's on GitHub, presumably.
I think so. Two things. One, that it doesn't support Perl, as far as I know.
Okay.
So I'm just telling you about the technology here. But on the other hand, it's open source, I think. I haven't really looked at it in depth. Just started to use recently. I'm just checking. Whatever. I think, yeah, I can find this one. So, wait, what's going on? Yes. Something's strange. Anyway, sorry. So this is just my project, and then in the GitHub folder, I have a file called Dependabot, and in there you say what kind of package ecosystem you use. Here it's pip because it's a Python project, and how often to give you a report or do something. But that's just to this is specifically to upgrade dependencies. Okay. And then what it does, for me, it's on a monthly basis. Wait a second, I have to show the other part. So in this project, I have a requirements file, which is the Python way to write, one of the ways in Python to write down your dependencies. But here the dependencies are just the names of the packages without the version number. But because this is a this is an application and not an open source module. It's open source, but it's an application and not just a module. So I think I felt that it's a good idea to have to fix the version numbers. Okay, so that's sort of my newest way of thinking, is that for modules or third-party libraries or whatever we call them, so in Perl way modules, you wouldn't you might set the minimum version number, but you wouldn't fix the exact version number. You might say this module requires this version of something, but not, you wouldn't be specific. But in an application you would. And so here there is this constraints file where you have actually each package that is in use. So this is not just the direct dependencies, but this is all the dependencies, all the dependency tree. Okay, and you can here it's fixed. Okay, so it's telling exactly which version I'm using, and then so whoever installs this system, they have the exact same version. Well, assuming that the server, the PI server gives you the same thing, but it's a fairly good control of software configuration management. And then comes this thing, sorry, not the issues, the dependabot, and then it will go and because I configured, so once a month, check the list of dependencies and send me pull requests for each dependency to upgrade it if there is anything to upgrade. Okay, which I started to use only recently, this part, but let me go here, settings. Where is it? Code, security and analysis, I think. And here is the dependabot. Okay, so in the GitHub configuration, you can set up the dependabot, and then you can say alerts, receive alerts for vulnerabilities that affect your dependencies. So it's not your code base, it's your dependencies. Okay, but I mean, you can, if and again, I think it doesn't support Perl. So that would be an investment, I guess, but it would be very useful for both you as a company and for other companies to create this, or for anyone at the end. And then you as a company, or employee at a company, but as a company, you, even if your code is not on cPanel, you could create a pseudo application even that only has the dependencies there. Right?
Mm-hmm.
And then you would get all the notifications when you have a security issue or a change in dependencies by them. But I think, again, that Dependabot itself, so the tool itself, is open source, so you could run it on in-house as well. I think I looked at it once, briefly, very briefly, just to the point that seeing that it's here. Okay, I never tried to run it. So this is the Dependabot, and then let's see. I guess here in this package would be the various plugins for it, for each one of the ecosystems. It looks like, okay, so there's the gem, it's Ruby, Elixir, PHP. I don't see the Python ones. Maybe they are somewhere else, I don't know. Or maybe they are part of the core for some reason. Well, it looks like, see? So if I go to one of my other projects, let's say, let's go to the Perl Weekly. Perl Weekly. Okay, so this is just the source code of the Perl Weekly, and I could come here and to the code security analysis, and I think it's so this is enabled, the alerts. I don't know if it really works with Perl. Okay, I haven't checked it, but this is the default. So this is why it's enabled. I don't recall ever receiving one for any Perl related thing. And one security updates, and here I can enable it, all the rest, and then it gives you this one, and oh, here is the link. That's what I was looking for. I guess it was in the other one as well, but so here is the supported. No, what is this? Oh, yeah, the ecosystems. So there's no CPAN mentioned here. What is cargo?
It's to do with Rust, isn't it?
Okay. So that's it. So yeah, this would be probably it would be a valuable project. I add it to my pitch to the companies, right?
Yeah.
Because
no, it's definitely valuable.
right. So so I guess this what I showed you at the beginning of the fixed dependencies. This is, I mean, every language has in Perl. Usually you put in the makefile PL just the minimum requirements of the modules. But if you use Carton, and I think there's another one, then you can use you can actually fix all the dependencies that you want, that you have. Right. So this would be okay. What else? I should have left you finish your thoughts.
Was that a question to me?
Sorry. Yeah.
I've forgotten what your question was really. I mean,
what are the issues that what are the issues that you as a company face with modules, with Perl modules, basically, primarily Perl, but in general we can talk about open source.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously use some JavaScript modules.
So NPM.
So we have the same. Yeah, we don't actually use that, but that's a long story. But
okay.
Yeah, but we should be. I mean, I know that that there is good support for the JavaScript with this equivalent of Dependabot or whatever, and it's something we definitely ought to be doing. And hopefully, the move to GitHub, which we're undertaking, will help with that.
By the way, sorry to interrupt you again. You're on sorry, what? I forgot the name of the version control.
Mercurial.
Mercurial, yeah. I was just thinking about HG and I forgot what is the name.
Right. Okay.
You could start, or maybe you already have, a synchronization to GitHub with a private repo.
Yeah, I mean, we're doing some trial conversions at the moment, and periodically upload new versions, and people are actually pulling the the GitHub Git repository down and playing with it and stuff. So we're actually kind of doing some exploratory work, as it were, finding our way around Git and things, which is obviously going to be a big learning curve, really. Although Git and HG have got a lot in common. I mean, they're very, very similar in the way they work, but there's a lot of differences too. And So it's just going to be something we just got to do. So that's what we'll do.
Yeah. Okay. So what did I do? No, it's still recording. Okay. Ah, here's the button. Zoom is freaking me out recently, or I don't know. Strange. Right. So yeah. So that's basically my thought these days of trying to figure out, first of all, what might be the needs of companies regarding open source. Okay, so the thing is that, I mean, you can fix everything yourself. You could take over all these modules. You could fork all these things. You could actually have a fork and maintain a fork out there.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think that's ideal. I don't think
but
that's a good idea.
So it's I mean, it costs time. And
because yeah, I think one of my major worries about doing that with any of this stuff really is that it's essentially security, because you know, if you've got something like a vulnerability turns up, if you're using a CPAM module, although, as I was saying earlier, I don't know a clean mechanism of actually finding out about it and doing something about it. You've got a possibility of dealing with it. But if you've got your own version of the code, nobody's going to tell you there's a problem. You know, that concerns me more than anything. You know, how do you even find out that there's a problem to solve? And in other words, your system could be vulnerable and you could be completely unaware.
Sorry?
You could be completely unaware that there's a problem on the system, because but if you're using a CPAM module that's maintained, there's, you know, problems found, they put in a new version, and somehow or other you find out that that's there and important, that's okay. But if you've got your own version of a module, whatever reason, and there's a security issue with it, you're never going to find out that there's a problem. Nobody's going to tell you.
You know, I thought about two stories I had, or actually three, I think, but one of them is exactly or very, well, quite the same. I was contracted by a company once that maybe I told you already, that they had this some changes they made to, I think, DBD, MySQL, or one of the DBD things, and they asked me, and they noticed that since they made these local changes, in-house changes, there's a new version of this module, and they wanted to upgrade. So basically, that was the motivation, that they called me and then said, "Oh, Gabor, you know, open source stuff, so take our changes and push it to the open source project," which obviously is a misunderstanding of what people can do, but fine.
Sure.
So I looked at the source code and found out very interesting things. First of all, the issue they had was like what you said. The issue they had was already reported to RT before they made the local changes. There was already a fix attached to the RT ticket.
Right.
With a good fix. And finally, their fix was actually an SQL injection attack.
Okay.
It was open for an they weren't using placeholders for whatever they used. They used
okay.
So it was clear to me that even if and by the time I think actually they contacted me, that patch was already, I think, included. I don't remember it anymore. But the thing is that this was exactly what you were just described. That they had a local change. They didn't know that it's a security issue. They've been using it for like 3 years already.
Yeah, sure.
Distributing to clients, actually. So it's like, whatever. And so you can avoid this and I understand, and it was a long time ago. Okay, so it was like at least 10 years ago. Definitely before GitHub. Okay, but and people these days know a lot more about open source. I think. I mean, people in corporations, but still, how to send a pull request and going out, that's still a big step. And at one point you might need to take over maintainership of a package if you would like it to move forward, right? Because if the maintainer, if the person who is maintaining now doesn't maintain, and I showed you actually one of the modules that I took over once, and then I added some automated tests, and then I passed it on to someone else. But that person didn't release anything since then. So it's still on my name, the most recent version, even though it was more than a year ago. And whatever, I mean, people have other stuff to do than volunteer their time, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So you can't demand anything really.
No.
And that's sort of the point. And I think in Perl it's getting worse. I mean, I don't know. So the thing is that Perl, there are less and less people who would want to do these things, who would maintain their modules, right? Because, well, that's how it goes these days.
Yeah.
In other languages, there are many people, but there are lots of packages as well. So there might be the same problem as well. I mean, I noticed many Python packages that haven't been touched for a long time.
Yeah.
And or had just a big queue of pull requests, even not even issues. I mean, issues I can understand. You have to, someone has to implement this. But if you have a pull request already and you don't apply it for a year or 2 or 5, or close it maybe. I don't know. Actually, this is a good question to, again, asking, what do you think should be happening to pull requests? If you could.
Well, actually, there's another thing I think about CPAN modules, and I'm sure the same thing applies to Python and anything else, probably a lot of Node modules as well, JavaScript modules, is that people, I mean, I've come across a lot recently, some of them through the pull request, but more generally, basically it's just somebody's written an API written a Perl API onto something that exists, something that accesses an API somewhere. So you get the way of formatting the messages from Perl into the API and come back again. And then, the API dies or it changes or the person loses interest. So these things are then on the CPAN just not used, essentially. And it's really hard to spot when this is going on. Okay, in a way that's a kind of not an important thing, because if the API is not being used, nobody's going to want to pull, get the CPAN module down at all. It's kind of useful as an example, I suppose, for other things, but there's a lot of things on there which shouldn't be there. And I don't know how you kind of, on the other hand, you want the freedom of people to be able to put stuff up there that basically works, but on the other hand, you want to, I don't quite know how to balance it up, because you want to sort of say, actually, there's another module that does this, and maybe you should be using this one instead. And there's an awful lot of stuff where there's very similar functionality between two modules.
Yeah.
And it's really quite hard to tell which one you should be using. Now, often they're called, 2 and 3 because there's been a fork, like Dancer 2, and stuff. So Dancer's still around because people have implemented it, so you can't let go of it, but you end up with Dancer 2. And then that gets confusing because you start looking through the literature or on Google or whatever it is, and then all the stuff you find is for Dancer, but that doesn't apply anymore because it's changed in Dancer 2.
Yeah.
And that's a hard one, because people write documents. I've been finding some stuff. You look for a problem in Perl and you find something that's like 10, 15 years old, and the solution's just posted are completely wrong now. I can't think of an example, but I've come across a couple of cases now where you just wouldn't do it in the way that this is offered by the solution. And that's not a Perl problem. That applies to other things as well, obviously.
Yeah. There is another thing, by the way, I just thought about. So, well, in Perl too, you can import all the functions from a module, or you can import them one by one, the ones that you need. And if you're importing, you just say import everything, or you say use module name and it imports everything by default or whatever, then you can have a clash between these functions, right? The same function name can come from there, and then if you reorder your use statements and two modules export the same function, then suddenly things can go wrong.
Change things.
So, and the same issue with Python. So I wouldn't recommend to anyone importing, and in Python you would say import and star if you would like to import. And there are core modules in Python with examples using this kind of import statement, which I think is a really, really bad advice in good programming. But it's there, and I guess I don't know if how. So technically, it wouldn't be difficult to change these things, but culturally might be. I mean, especially in Perl, where people have the more conservative way of thinking of, you don't change this. This is okay. This works.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I'm quite bad at saying use module name. I'm not importing functions, because but in the world I live in, basically we don't have name clashes, basically, because functionally that's just not going to happen, just because of the way things are. So for us, it's not. What you say is, but it's when you start importing stuff from other modules. I mean, you get functions like, well, a function like read, for example, it's just wholly ambiguous because it's not quite clear what we're talking about. So it could be a file, or it could be a stream, or it could be something else, and so you import some module, you have some module use some fancy IO, it's got a read function in, and right, it just but yeah, generic functions like read and stuff like that are and they're perfectly legitimate, but yeah, it can cause problems.
Do you use Perl Critic?
I do very much. Yeah. It never tells me off for doing that. I suppose I don't ask it.
Sorry, if never what?
It never tells me off for not specifying the functions.
Okay. No, I don't remember if there is a rule for that, but I'll have to look it up. And then some of the rules you have to add. Okay, so there's a default rules, and there are some additional rules, and okay. What else? So this, by the way, this dependable thing, just recently I saw a post, I think, or just a comment, I think Dave Cross mentioned, he was talking about something like this. I don't know if you know about dependable or not, but he was talking about this functionality for Perl.
Okay.
Okay, finding out if there is something out of date, and maybe sending a pull request. By the way, about this dependable, so I started to use it, and it's mostly disturbing me these days, because what happens is that it will send me separate pull requests for each upgrade.
Okay.
So I set it for if you set it too frequently, then every minor upgrade might send you. I don't like it. So I set it monthly now. But the point is then that maybe you need to upgrade these two packages together. You can't upgrade them. So at least one of them has to be upgraded before the other one, because the one of them depends on a new version of the other one. And so your CI will fail of one of the pull requests, and you'll have to apply them one after the other and whatever. And instead of that, you could just run your upgrade all the modules to the most recent one, run the tests, and if everything fails, then save the new updated versions of the modules. But anyway, so I'm looking at it how to improve that. Right.
How did you get to Dependabot from the repository? I'm just looking at something, one of my repositories at the moment.
So I went to, if you go to the settings, am I sharing it now or not?
Yeah, not no, at the moment.
I'm not sharing. Okay, so let me share it. If I go to the settings, and then there is security and code security analysis.
Oh yeah, okay.
And then the Dependabot, and actually it tells me, oh yeah, it's okay, yeah. And there is a code scanning and all kind of these tools that you can, that they offer in but I guess there are a lot of these actions that you can also use. So where is actually, I don't know where is the, I never looked at the action registry where you can list all the actions and whatnot. I can look at this one because GitHub OSDC code maven and OSDC generate site generator, and then this, no, it doesn't have the link. Action marketplace. Okay, I guess this comes from these marketplaces. So you can find all kind of GitHub actions that you would like to use. So one other thing that, for example, that I saw and in Python, there is an action that you can use to release your package to PyPI. So you would, it's being triggered by a tag. So if you put a tag on your code, then this will be triggered, and then it will, well, I guess you have your steps that running all the tests and creating the zip file that needs to be uploaded, but it does the upload part. And well, I don't think that Perl has that. And so in Perl, you have the diskzilla idea that you manage everything from locally. And some people even, because of this Zilla, I will even encounter a number of Perl projects that I couldn't locally run because it sort of immediately wanted to log into pose.
Okay.
And I said, oh, no, I just want to run the tests. I definitely don't want to upload anything.
Yeah, it'll be in the middle of a what do they call a plugin bundle?
Yeah, one of the bundles, yes.
So they'll have it in the middle of their author bundle. So it's really hard to chop it out to yeah, to run the test. I mean, I had this problem with a few weeks ago, if you remember, and it wasn't. It was well, it was, the solution was simpler than that, but it just I couldn't figure out how to add a test.
Yeah.
And it turned out to be easy. I just had to add it to Git. But the way I found that out was actually going to the bundle and going through line by line what was actually done, and then working out which is the one that was causing the issue, and then sorting it. And it ought to be simpler than that, I think, if you want to write a test, really.
Yeah, I mean, I have, so this is what I started to do in earlier, and this is partly what cpan Digger is about, but partially what in this course or courses like this, I try to get people to do is one of the things is to write to make sure that open source projects have in their README file or in the contribution file instructions how to set up the local development environment and run the tests. Whether natively or in C or in Docker, that's a secondary question. Because this is one of the things that makes contribution to an open source project easier. And though the question arises, at what level, how detailed should be these instructions? So what can I assume in these instructions? Let's say in a Perl module, can I assume that the person knows that if there is a makefile, then makefile PL, then the standard steps are Perl makefile PL make. Should I assume that or not?
Yeah, I think so. I think you're right about that. That really, that whatever you use, you should have a link that says for more information, go here. So if it's a makefile PL, you should say this is described better here, and DZIL it should say go here stuff, and rather than just saying DZIL, because I found that quite, just in general, with documentation in general, with a lot of stuff on cpan. I've been looking at using well, let's call it Swagger and Modulicious recently. And so one of the first things I had to, once I got it basically working fairly quickly, but then I started to look at error handling, and it's another nightmare. Because none of the simple examples that you can find actually generate any errors in the code. They don't handle them at all. And it took me quite a slog to get through to find how I should be doing the errors, how I should be, if something inside the code, well, there's two kinds of errors, like, you try to do something you're not allowed to do, so you've got to say, oh, sorry, you can't do that, and then you might screw up an SQL statement, so it might have to die or throw an error or whatever. But there was no description at all how to deal with that. And so it took me quite some time to sort of trawl through the various bits of documentation for the Open API stuff and Modulicious. And that's not unique. I mean, that happens a lot. And somehow or other, that yeah, don't put in detail, but just say, look at this document to find out how to do this. There should be a lot more of that, and I think, yeah,
that's part of the reason of part of the articles I have on Perl Maven are like these, that okay, I use some module and I either error handling or some basic usage, okay, and we don't have the example. So I would love, that was a really long time ago that I started this, but that I encountered I think I encountered or I built it, I don't remember, so a couple of modules on cpan that have an examples directory, but it's not, you can't really see them anywhere unless you unzip the file. If it's not installed. Meta cpan, well, there wasn't meta cpan back then. I think even now it doesn't really show them as like too prominently. You have to look for them. And so I had this code in one of the modules that would take the examples and generate pod files for the release. So all the examples will be in the pod files as well. It will be a copy of them, but it will be upfront. Someone who would like to see various examples. So that was one side of it, and the other side of this thing was that I started to add tests that would execute the examples and verify that the examples actually do what they say they do, okay, and they still work, okay, and they are not out of date because I changed something in the project and the example and forgot to update the example. So these are things. So these are things that that I would probably do on a contractual basis for companies, saying, okay, we are this company. We depend on these, I don't know, 20, 30, 200 modules in Perl. And we would like to make sure that these are relatively well maintained or well maintained, and they have documentation and they have whatever. And you could do it yourself, obviously. It takes time. You could contract the individual maintainers, but that's most of the maintainers wouldn't be able to do anything with, I don't know, a couple of $100, because either they have a work anyway, and so that doesn't make any change, right? So this is the idea. And right. I'm just taking notes of what we were talking about and the ideas that we have here and the things that you mentioned. Do you know how many modules you use?
How many?
How many modules? Yeah, how many Perl modules? I mean, CPA modules.
Yeah, I don't really have a handle on it, to be honest. I don't know.
Okay.
I think it's the simplest thing to say. I don't know.
Do you have like a makefile PL or something like this?
What we do is we basically have our own cut down version of CPAN, which has got the modules we use in it. Roughly speaking, that's the best way of describing it. And and then everything, essentially all the modules are there. So those are the ones we use. I think one of the problems with that is that we will not know if a module becomes unused, if you see what I mean.
Yes, yeah.
I might just be able to just have a quick, see if I can work out. guys. So I've got a list of things. It's hard to know how to count them because some of them are going to be directories. Okay, so a very naive way of looking at it, I just went to where the stuff's stored and counted the PM files in there, and there was 627. How that equates to CPAN modules, I'm not sure.
Yeah, it's the number of PM files, which some modules, some packages on CPAN has tens.
Yeah.
Of modules, others have one.
Yeah. So.
Yeah. So it's less than 600. Okay, we can.
No. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
It's yeah. I just recently looked at one of my clients' projects, which is actually in Python, but in general doesn't really matter. And they have about 50 direct dependencies, which translates to 250 in total. Like the dependencies of the dependencies.
Yeah.
Which is one of the another risk factor sort of, because I guess you pay more attention to the modules that you directly depend on.
Yeah.
But not the ones that are somewhere beneath there. Who cares?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. I don't. Yeah. So if you go and would like to decide on a module to use or not to, if you use this module or that module, or to even write your own, what are the considerations? How do you decide?
How do I decide? Okay, that's an interesting question. Well, I guess if you've okay, so there's two things you've got to think of. I'm doing something? Is there a package there already that does this, or something like what I'm doing, what I want? And so you could search, and then you find, and in all circumstances, not just Perl, everything you find hopefully a small number of packages or whatever that satisfy or could potentially satisfy what you're looking for. But often you don't really know until you've tried. And then once you've got them, with CPAN, it's kind of what I would do is actually look at it, see when it was last updated. Has it got what kind of issues has it got? Have the issues been cleaned up? That kind of thing. Has it got lots of issues that are, say, over 5 years old and there's been no activity on it? To give us some idea that it's somebody at least is looking at it. And then trying it out and seeing if it works, I guess. Is that the right answer?
78 points.
Sorry.
78 points.
Okay.
You can still improve on the answer, yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Interesting that you say that you first check these external things like the issues, and only then you try.
Yeah, I mean, Well, it depends. I mean, if you got a package which is nearly dead, well, it hasn't been used for a long. Clearly, nobody's maintained it for ages. It might actually do what you want, but that's got to be something you look at down the line.
Right.
Um. So, but yeah, the other packages have got to work, but to be used. I mean, I think and there's always a thing. Okay, then you come down to this thing. You might find something that nearly works, but it's quite old or hasn't been changed for a while. And you realize you can make a fairly simple change or update, enhance the thing in some way. That's happened before. But then it's quite hard often to persuade the maintainer to make a change. So I don't know. I try to avoid writing new modules if possible. Try to use what's on CPAN where possible,
Yeah.
because it's somebody else maintaining it rather than us.
Yeah, and then the security issue you mentioned, which
Yeah,
is and
absolutely,
it's very interesting because obviously there is this huge tension between the closed source advocates and the open source advocates, let's say, and the closed source people say, oh, it's in the open, so every hacker and cracker can look at it, and you say basically the opposite.
yeah.
And
Well, you say yeah,
I totally agree with you. So
yeah, that's right. It's the same thing, isn't it? So you because you can look at it, you can fix it basically. If somebody does anything bad in
yeah.
theory. Yeah.
Right. That's so on one hand you're right. On the other hand, once a module is not maintained anymore, so it's not then it's just there, and you as the sole user now, or the user who not necessarily the sole user, but that you don't know about other users. So from your point of view, that's just you. So you can fix it if you find out the issues, but no one else looks at it. So the big promise of open source of, oh, many people will look at it and fix all the code and then everything will be purple and happy.
Yeah.
That happens way less as the number of users goes down. Or if it wasn't high at the beginning or from the beginning. But in the case of Perl, it's more like the number of users or of developers going down. So yeah, it's also interesting because on the Facebook page where I asked similar questions, there's always one or two people. I don't know if this is the same person every time or it's different people who comment that I don't use module. I avoid using modules, and it's always and I understand it in the corporate world where management makes it hard for you to use modules. But that you as the developer decide that you don't want to use, that's much harder for me to understand.
Yeah, it seems to me it's other people doing your work for you. If there's somebody's already done something, and you could just basically, should we say, steal or copy an existing module.
Right.
But then the problem with that is it comes down to what I was saying earlier, that if there's a security issue found, you're just not going to be aware of it. If somebody fixes the CPAN version for a security or for any issue, but security issues most importantly, you're not going to know.
Right.
I know. I first learned Perl because I'd got some. I had some horrendous pattern matching to do with some text documents, and regexes were just wonderful for my task. And on the base of that, I started to learn Perl, and then I started to use it more generally, and I got into Perl best practices stuff, and I know that Damien is very keen on people using cPanel modules on the basis that somebody else has done the work before and things.
Mm.
So I kind of take that ethos with me a little bit, although I think there are some caveats to it, as we've been saying, really.
Yeah. Yeah, I started to learn Perl somewhere in 95, 96, like 97-ish. Before that, I was actually working at a company that was a startup company, very early startup, and it was around in the early 90s already. And I was writing, that was a funny story. Their product cost $1 million, the product. And to install it or implement it or whatever, you would all need to spend another $1 or $2 million on hardware. So it was a little bit of a hard sell.
Yeah.
But I mean, their clients were Boeing and companies like huge companies. But it was a hard sell, and if they didn't have a lot of clients, obviously, with such a price range. By the way, this extra $2 million was buying notebook or notebooks or some portable computers back then to the employees, and this would be an AI system to find out about issues with complex machines. So, and I was working on what they called entry-level product. If you have a expensive product that costs a few $1,000s, you might try to sell something that costs only 10, so people will buy that first, and then they see that this works, and then they buy the more expensive ones. But because this was the full product was $1 million, so the entry-level product was like $30,000. And I was writing a compiler in Oak.
Okay.
So you can imagine that. And Lisp. Oak, not Lisp, Scheme, actually. Oak and Scheme. I was using Oak and Scheme in the product. It was a lot of fun. And then I started to learn Perl, I think, around there, and I don't exactly recall why. But
yeah. I guess I started. I mean, one of the things that I didn't actually get involved with, but was in one of the products. I used to work for Library Systems, and what we had the company I worked for was kept on buying other companies, and they ended up buying a company that had an ingress database running on some kind of Unix or several kinds of Unix, and they had lots of reporting tools, but they were all using written in awk and grep and sed and that kind of stuff. And I remember saying to the manager, why don't we use Perl for this? It's just going to be so much easier. And they did in the end, but I wasn't involved in that. Well, there you go.
mm-hmm.
That was a long time ago. That was in the 90s, late 90s.
Yeah. So, by the way, this open source, so I was thinking another issue related to this and this service thing that I would like to offer is that I saw quite a few companies that basically said that, okay, and again, this was a couple of years ago, maybe things have changed, but not for all the companies yet, that they had this whatever bug in this open source module package, and then they wanted it to be fixed, but they didn't want to share it with upstream, right? They didn't want to share it back. And their justification or their explanation for this was that we paid for it. Why should we give it to other people or other?
Yeah, okay.
and yes, they paid for the fix. That's right. But and I was trying to explain exactly about that they will pay a lot more if they don't send it back and don't integrate it now, because when the upstream changes and they will want to use it, they will have to start keeping applying their patches, and it won't be easy.
Yeah.
Especially if someone solved the same issue that they had in a slightly different way. And then what can you do? You can't probably make those changes anymore. I mean, someone in the upstream. So basically, that's the one more, I think, reason why as a company you would be better off returning whatever changes you make to open source projects. Right? Because otherwise, I mean, yes, you paid for it, whatever, right? But you also received all the other things free of charge. But let's put it aside. Yeah. Did I mention that poll I ran? That I think I started it last week, so maybe I already mentioned. I asked in the Facebook group of what their employers do about open source, and one of the possible answers was nothing, and the other was contributing back or allowing the employees to contribute or whatever. And the majority was saying that they don't do anything. They hope everything will work out. And there were a couple of interesting comments, and one of them is basically in some companies what I don't know, the people in general or management sort of thinks that open source or whatever they download open source is both free and ready, and it doesn't need anything. It just works out of the box. Which is a funny thing because on the other hand, other managers say that open source is horrible and it doesn't work and what else. So
yeah.
Anyway, that's it. Do you have any? I mean, let me see if I have any more notes here. You know, I have this. I was learning Spanish in the last couple of years. I had these classes, online classes, and with basically people who either teachers or just people who are native Spanish and ready to speak. And some of them had this list of topics. So we had this conversation, and suddenly I see them looking at their topics and then asking some question. Okay, so what kind of food do you like?
Yeah, that's okay.
So I'm feeling that way now, looking at the topics I put here in this subject. But yeah, so I had this thing that I thought I will need to start to create some tool to measure basically the risks or whatever. What should I be? Yeah, let's call it the risk of a project, of any open source project. And then issues like the things like that, what some of the things that you mentioned, right? That how many issues are there? When were the issues opened? Are there really old issues that no one addresses? When was the last commit? How many committers were there? But I also think about like the size of the code base. So I guess a bigger code base is more risky.
Yeah.
And the complexity of the code base, if you take the cyclomatic complexity or whatever measurement we can find.
Yeah, I found a bug in DivX class a few years ago now. I think 5 years ago, something like that now. And I kind of posted it as an issue or something, and somebody said, well, you haven't posted any tests to show that it doesn't work. Well, yeah, I didn't, because I had no idea how to at the time, particularly as it's referred to actually accessing a Microsoft, a Microsoft SQL database. I had no idea how to do that. And in fact, it was clearly an issue, and you didn't really need any tests to see that it was an issue. Oh, well, you didn't need a test to see that it was an issue. But I can see that you'd need a test to show that the fix worked. But it's just sat there. I still don't think it's been fixed, and it's basically because it's a big and complex thing, and there's a lot of contributors. So before anybody will accept anything, there's got to be a big consensus as to whether they'll allow, accept a pull request or whatever. And I think that slows the whole thing down. But obviously, it makes it more reliable in some ways. But there you go.
It doesn't like me? Yeah, 125 issues.
Yeah.
Which I think is the combination. Okay, so this is a strange thing, you see? No, the issues are from RT, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they use RT for issues, and the repository has 64 pull requests. Let me see. The issues. How do I see the number of them? There's no count of that?
It's 725 somewhere, isn't it? Not on that page, there isn't, though, is there?
I don't see it. I don't see any count here.
There was on the previous page. But...
Sorry?
Here,
yeah, that's the number of issues that Metasipan is reporting. I was wondering whether it's it really reflects the number of issues opened here.
I just naturally assumed it did.
Yeah. So I think if both the issues and the pull requests are on GitHub, then this number reflects the combination of the two. So if you go to a module that it's using GitHub for issues, then this number reflects the combination of the two. But I'm not sure. But if you go to the repository, May so it's a year. Last commit a year ago. So not much is going on there either. Including the one that I sent a month ago, adding just GitHub Actions. So this is a sort of sad thing in general, that I mean, accepting no one commented at it, okay? So accepting something that external probably shouldn't be that hard. But the one we did on the DBDPG, the Postgres driver, that it wasn't accepted either yet. So same thing. Anyway, questions, comments. So I remember that when we discussed about how to select a module, I recently started to, so for this tool that I was thinking of building, analyzing code, I was thinking, okay, where should I store? Should I do it like the PyDigger that runs entirely on my own computer? Or should I still keep running on on GitHub Actions as the cpan digger does runs now. But the cpan digger only collects the most recent 100 things. It doesn't collect any historical data. But if I would like to start collecting more data, then I have to use some kind of database or some place. So I thought, okay, let's try to use S3 to store files. Okay, so I'll do the download and analyze and whatever, and I save my analysis in either individual JSON files or as an SQLite database, or I don't know what, on S3. So I went, okay, so let's look at some Perl modules that can access S3. And I don't use S3 of Amazon because I use Linode. Well, even my T-shirt is Linode, if you see it. Okay, so I use Linode primarily, or DigitalOcean, and Linode provides S3 compatible feature. And I tried like 2 or 3 Perl modules, and none of them, I couldn't use any of them yet. I don't know if it was just me not knowing how to use them properly. There was definitely no example in the documentation on how to use them with another S3 server, except of Amazon, I guess. But this is exactly what we are talking about. Do you use S3?
I don't. We don't know.
You know.
I have used it in other companies, but no, we don't use it.
And do you remember which module you used?
That's a good question. I don't.
Like there's AWS S3.
It was AWS for sure, but
Amazon S3. There is a net Amazon S3.
I didn't have any contact with it in the work I was doing.
Yeah. Okay, no problem. I'm showing that there are a couple of ones, and here, yeah. So I asked you how you decide, but I said okay. I said okay. Let's start with the newest one, because that should be the most up to date. I couldn't get them work yet. Well, I'll have to get back to it. I ran out of time of working on that. I had to do other things. Okay, shall we talk about something else? Do you have any other subject that you would like to bring up that we haven't covered, besides not having cakes for the last meeting?
I think this is a big problem, not having cake, I must say.
Yeah, I know.
I haven't got any big questions.
Right. So let's go for small ones.
Okay.
So you have like 600 or so modules, and you mentioned a couple of packages that you had issues with them. But that is not a lot, right?
Yeah.
In general, do you often upgrade modules, or it's mostly do you stick to whatever you have?
We don't often, but we do sometimes because we have to. So we're still using mod Perl, which we're trying to get out of using, but that's we've had some problems with Apache 2.4, and mod Perl took a while before it acclimatized to 2.4. It's way behind the world, and we had some problems with, problems we've sorted, but we had to upgrade quite a bit of that kind of level of infrastructure. I'm trying to think what else. There's some specific things that have happened, but nothing much apart from that I can think of. Yeah, that's about the only thing I can think of, really. I mean, there are one or two other things, but they're very minor.
Okay.
I think, you know, whether we should be doing that or not is another question. How we should be handling that.
Sorry, handling what?
I mean, whether we should do it or not. I wish I could remember. There was either a CPAN module or something that actually told you which what CVEs you got to be worried about on your system and CPAN modules. I wish I could remember what it was. Well, maybe I'll even try looking it up on CPAN.
Let's see if I can search for it.
Yeah.
Fetch CV vulnerability exposure information from the okay. Net NVD. So there are check for local CVEs, open services SNMP plugin. Okay. So there are two modules for this. Okay.
Okay, not just looking at CV.
That's the Amazon. Let's pause. That's nothing to do with this one. So there are this net NVD, then the net CVE, which this is.
Yeah, that CVE just tells you
new.
about, the thing I was looking at actually looked at the modules you'd got installed. I can't. And I'll just noticing that one or two packages have got references to CVE that apply to them. I ought to check them.
CPAN 2.0, okay. Okay, so here you have the, okay. So basically what you're, so this one, sorry?
Sorry, I can't remember whether this is what I was looking at. I'm not, it looks.
Okay. Well, this is also should be I mean, you need it locally, of course, because you would like to make sure that your modules are the versions of the modules you have don't have CVEs, or we'd like to be notified. But I guess it would be also nice to get it integrated into MetaCPAN.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where did you go before to get that list? I just happened to be looking at my screen when you did it.
Where was I before? That's what you're asking?
How did you get there? Yeah. Oh, you just did a lookup on.
So it's scan Perl modules for CV, and I don't remember which one I clicked anymore. This one.
Okay.
So this was a search, and it was on DuckDuckGo. Okay. So that's a good direction for the security checks, security vulnerabilities, and
Yeah.
and so see here says per DBI 1643, and if I go, what? Sorry, just DBI, and if I go to DBI, it's now version 643. Okay, so anything older than this has this issue.
Randomly see.
Interesting. And is there a mapping, or does this module, this Perl net download thingy, net CVE, does it provide you a mapping for actual modules?
No.
Okay. And this is also it's something old. Because I'm looking on the specific CV. Okay. Now these are old ones. There's no CV newer than this? Is that the claim, or that this website hasn't been updated? You see that the most recent one seems to be
last year.
Updated a year ago.
There were fairly few.
Okay, so this is the Perl. Let's say what if I go for, that's probably, I don't know how to change it. Python. What is this number?
Right.
So 2021.
That's the latest. I've just done an actual lookup of the CVE database, and it's got stuff in 2023.
Yeah. This one is the right? The on Mitra. Or the other one. So this one, the Mitra, and then there's the NIST.
I just looked directly in the pointing again. I just looked directly in it, which said search CV list, and stuck it in Perl and see what came out. And it came up with quite a lot of stuff. Well, not a huge amount, to be honest. Like 4 this year, 5 this year.
What did you find? What did you search for?
I just put Perl in when it said search in the CV in the CVE site.
This one, this side, the Mitra one.
Yeah, it's a search CV list, and I just stuck Perl into that. And
Here?
and well, no, maybe there.
That's the Google
Yeah,
search.
it probably is fine. Yeah, I think so. It's just
So
there's
this is just a
like all
Google search.
and
Well, is there another search here?
there's a search CV list on the black bar under the top.
Okay.
And that's essentially the list I've got.
Good.
Yeah, so there's a small number. I mean, it's a handful, but
Right, but that could also be so there's no mapping of CVs to actual modules.
no, no, there isn't. I mean, I'm sure I saw something that's annoying, but I can't find it. I'm not going to be able to find it now.
Okay. Okay, I'll look for it. What is this? Yet another view on the CVs. Okay. So given a CV, it will give you list like this. Interesting. So this is something else than to the NIST and the CV did there, or just they have. Okay. Fine. We can stop now if you
Yeah,
don't have anything else.
no, I think I'm done.
Okay, so let's end the video and the meeting and the course. I hope that you enjoyed it and learned something. I learned a lot. I know.
Yeah, yeah, I certainly has, and it's changed. Going to change the way that I work, which is good. And I'm definitely going to be doing some pull requests on some of these CPAP modules.
Okay. Feel free to mention me in the pull request, like @subgov, so I will get notified if you'd like, and then I can take a look at them as well. If you have any questions or Slack channel is still open, it will be open. So You can ask,
Yep.
and of course, you also know my email, so you can get in touch with me there as well.
Yep.
If you have questions, and we can discuss further issues.
Yeah, it's been good. I've learned a huge amount, and it's been very valuable.
Okay, so thank you very much. I'm closing the video now, and then we can have celebrate.
Okay.
Okay, so
Okay.
bye bye.
Bye.